Front and Center. Front and Center. A focus on important and significant developments affecting the lives of Filipinos, not only in the Philippines, but also those living and working around the world. Join us in Front and Center. Front and Center. Here on Radyo Pilipinas World Service.
Welcome to Front and Center, where we focus on developments in the Philippines, legislation that provides policies and directions that strives to promote a better economy for the country, issues that concern the welfare and well-being of every Filipino. All of these and more will be Front and Center. And you can watch this program on our Facebook page and YouTube channel, Radyo Pilipinas World Service, and you can hear this broadcast through our audio streaming at Evox PBS receiver app, and also on our shortwave broadcast on English programs starting at 10 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. on times at 200 UTC until 3:30 UTC on the following shortwave frequencies: 12.020 megahertz, 15.640 megahertz, and 17.665 megahertz. This is your host, Jerome Toledo. Let's begin Front and Center on Radyo Pilipinas World Service.
Front and Center. Front and Center. Here on Radyo Pilipinas World Service.
President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. has directed the Congress to prioritize four proposed legislative measures during a Legislative Executive Development Advisory Council or LEDAC meeting held in Malacanang Palace on Tuesday. President Marcos Jr. has asked the Congress to prioritize the following bills. Number one is the Anti-Dynasty Bill, Independent People's Commission Act Bill, and third is Party List System Reform Act Bill, and the last one is the Citizens Access and Disclosure of Expenditures for National Accountability or CADENA Act. And those bill is seeking to institutionalize transparency and accountability on public finance and as well as governance here in the Philippines. So how important is this, and what can the president do to implement this following Senate bills or congressional bills as soon as possible, and how is this going to affect the presidency of President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr.? So to tackle that matter, we now have on the line the assistant professor of the Department of Political Science at UP or University of the Philippines in Diliman, and at the same time he is a fellow at Octa Research, none other than Professor Ranjit Rai. Good morning, Professor Ranjit. Thank you so much for joining us in the program. Professor Ranjit.
Yeah, good morning to everyone. Good morning to you, Jerome, and to all our televiewers here and around the world.
All right, thank you. Okay, so thank you so much for joining us here on our program on a Friday. Okay, let's start with this issue here. We'll tackle the bills that President Marcos Jr. is asking to Congress to prioritize. So first one is the Anti-Dynasty Bill, and my question is this, Professor Ranjit. So, as we know, President Marcos Jr. himself is a product of a political dynasty. His father was a former president, and at the same time, her sister, Senator Amy, is a senator, and her relatives are holding public offices or positions like in his hometown in Ilocos Norte. So, regarding the Anti-Dynasty Bill, Prof. Ranjit, is this a genuine turning point for Philippine politics, given that most of our politicians are a product of a political dynasty?
It's a structural problem. In fact, it's not just President Marcos. Likely around 8 out of 10 congressmen, in the House of Representatives belong to, a dynasty. However we define it. The anti-dynasty provision in our constitution is the impetus for all these initiatives over the last almost 2 decades now. Attempts at realizing a constitutional mandate, which is to uh, uh, create a law that will prevent dynasties from dominating. But it has been we have been unlucky and unsuccessful as a political system in realizing this constitutional mandate, as with so many other mandates, no,
Mm-mm.
uh, freedom of information. So, let me preface my answer this way. No,
Mm-mm.
whenever the president articulates no a strong support for something as controversial as the anti-dynasty bill, it's a significant step forward. No? uh, in terms of governance and in terms of the reform agenda of the administration. Yeah. By elevating such a politically sensitive issue
Mm-mm.
such as the anti-dynasty initiative, the party list reform, no, and all those other the Cadena, no, act, which is to realize broader transparency and accountability.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, the president is signaling a real willingness, no, to confront long-standing structural weaknesses in our political system. The political implications are substantial. No, it suggests that the president is now ready to pursue, or the administration is now ready to pursue reforms that previous administrations avoided,
Mm-hmm.
because these issues threaten entrenched interests, undermine coalitions that support administrations, no, and of course this particular initiative, uh, if the president means what he says and says what he means,
Mm-hmm.
will probably also undermine his own coalition, no, in the House, in particular, no, because a lot of the congressmen, of course, are members of dynasties, di ba?
Yeah. Right.
So will they legislate against their own interest? The big question with the dynasty bill, which is very controversial and also quite popular, when you look at surveys conducted by our survey company Okta Research,
Mm-hmm.
there's strong support for an anti-dynasty initiative. But
Mm-hmm.
what the president articulated simply just performative,
Mm-hmm.
palabas, papogi,
Mm-hmm.
Filipino, or was he really serious about it? No.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, the timing still reflects both,
Yes.
the
Right.
impact of political pressure, political calculation. You have to understand, Jerome, the public frustration has been rising. The
Mm-hmm.
church, the business community, through all the protests that we've seen over the last 2 months, they have become more vocal.
Mm.
And you have to understand that 2020 is coming, is close, no? And there are already
Mm-mm.
political realignments happening at the local and the congressional level, no?
Mm.
Uh, and it's against this backdrop, no? That the president appears, to be very reform oriented, because this is something that you don't actually do
Mm-mm.
at the end of your term,
Right.
and at
Right.
a time when you need coalitions to be able to push your agenda for reform in other aspects
Mm.
like the economy,
Mm-mm.
the budget, and as well as build a coalition that will help you
Mm-mm.
win, no, or have a say in the outcome of 2028.
Mm-mm. Right.
But it seems, Jerome, that the president appears less focused on short-term popularity
Mm-mm.
and is now more intent on shaping a lasting legacy
Mm-mm.
anchored on some form of reform.
Mm-mm.
So that's how I'm going to frame our discussion.
Mm-hmm.
That let's give the president the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
isn't politically wise to do such a thing now. The political calculation is uncertain whether this will actually have any move forward, at least the political dynasty issue, because
Mm-mm.
it's not just an issue that is controversial and close to the hearts of
Mm-mm.
various interest groups, lalo na in Congress and in the local government system. But it's also technical.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm.
It's not very easy to talk about
Mm-mm.
this issue without,
Mm-mm.
bringing issues like constitutional rights, no,
Yes.
of
Yes. Yes.
this discrimination against certain groups and individuals. You also have the certain issues, technical issues, no,
Mm.
with regards to crafting the bill. And in fact, there already is a bill in Congress. I think 2 or 3 bills already
Mm-hmm.
filed in the lower house and in the Senate, both in the past and the present, that talk about this. First, it's politically, controversial.
Mhm.
Second, it's also hard, institutionally, to push such a bill forward,
Mhm.
because not just because of the entrenched interest against it, but see, how do you really realize it? Is it the
Mm.
first, a fourth level of consanguinity? All of these technical issues that come into play. And
Yeah.
does a political dynasty act really reform the system?
Mhm.
I mean,
Oh,
if you have a political dynasty act, yet you do not have a political party reform act,
mhm.
will it be, something substantial? Will reform actually happen? Can you now have a political dynasty initiative, a political party reform act, without substantial electoral reforms?
Mhm.
Di ba? These are
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
eh,
Mhm.
important institutional questions. When you reform, will ending political dynasties solve the problem?
Mhm.
Uh, and then, of
So,
course,
so
these dynasties will go to the
mhm.
Supreme Court and say, hey, this is discriminatory just because I have a family name like Marcos or
Right.
Romualdez,
But
or
okay.
for that matter, etc. And now I'm banned from,
Mm.
my right, no, as a citizen, to run for office, to be a part of the political process,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
just because I have a family name that
Mm.
has that, even if I have the best intentions in the world.
That's right.
So these are all important questions, and that
Mm-mm.
reform in the dynasty issue has to come together with other structural reforms, and
Mm-mm.
most notably your Political Party Reform Act.
Yeah, and Prof. Ranjit, you mentioned about the process of of this bill. You mentioned about the process that needs to go through. Like you said, the political reforms, electoral reforms. So, meaning to say, we need to do step by step.
Or all of these things together, step by step. I don't think it will substantially improve our political condition if we just ban dynasties. We need to have
Mm-hmm.
substantial political party reform.
Mm-hmm.
Our politics is not disciplined by program,
Mm-hmm.
policy, ideas or ideology.
Mm-hmm.
Understand? It's organized around people, personalities,
Mm-hmm.
parochial interest,
Yeah.
personalism, and particularism. So you take
It's
away the
mhm,
dynasties, other people come in who are untrained, who still, have
mhm,
the same mindset, who do not structure politics around
mhm.
ideas, around the interest of the people. That's going to be a problem. So
Yeah,
you
yeah.
need to go hand in it goes hand in hand with reforming our party, so that we train leaders, di ba?
Mhm.
We recruit leaders.
Yeah.
We train them. We build social movements around these parties that have a mass
Mhm.
base, a real mass base, no? And they don't just exist during elections. And the
That's right.
members of parties don't move from one party to another depending on who is the president. You
Mhm.
see, what we're trying to do here is replace this old order of politicians, but they will be replaced by another group of politicians.
Mm.
Again, reproducing the kind of politics that
Mhm.
makes dynasties problematic in the first place.
Mhm. And
Okay, let me
yeah.
state this clearly, ha.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
am
Go.
for an anti-political dynasty law.
Mhm.
It's very
And
important. It's a very important first step.
mm,
But my view is, if we're going to go this far, why not also reform our political parties, di ba?
mhm. Right, right,
That is
right.
where the Party List Reform Act is going to be very consequential.
Yes, yes.
In my
Mm,
view, Jerome, it will
mm,
be more consequential than the anti-dynasty bill. Largely because, the anti-dynasty bill, for me, has to come hand in hand with reforms in our political party and the electoral system. But
mm,
if you reform, it's a low-hanging fruit, this Party List Reform Act. Why? Because the party list law has not made the system proportional nor
mm,
representative.
I
You
see.
understand? So
Yes,
the
yes.
value here has to be, how do we create a new party list reform act,
Mm,
where number one, we have real parties that are built around ideologies, programs, and platforms, instead of vehicles for corrupt politicians to steal money from government.
mhm.
So the party list law, I mean, that's low hanging, Jerome.
Yes.
What my suggestions are: number one, take away the 2% floor, make it 5 or 10%, like or 5%, like many European models of
Mm-hmm.
party list. Number two, take away the 3-seat maximum, di ba? The
Oh.
3-seat
Mm-hmm.
ceiling, di ba? Floor mo is 2%, very low.
Yep.
Anybody can get 2% of the
Mm-hmm.
vote. In
Yeah.
today, as we speak, there are party list organizations who have a seat in Congress with less than 1% of the vote.
Yes, that's
Because
right.
of all the Supreme Court rulings, no? Now you likely will have a party list will get at least or less than 2% vote just to fill in the 20% requirement of the
Mm.
Constitution
So is that
and realize the Supreme Court ruling. So
mm.
just to finish to cap it off,
Yeah, sure.
in my view, the Party List Reform Act is the most significant of all of those. It
Mm.
will really change our political system quickly because number one, all you have to do is really take out the floor, which is make it higher. So it's
Mm-mm.
the minimum is 5% of the total votes of the party list,
Mm-mm.
and then you take out the maximum seat rule. So you have now the incentive is to build strong parties,
Mm.
big parties. The current law fragments it incentive yan eh. What does
Yes.
the law, 'di ba? The law is basically an institution, 'di ba? It sets rules.
Mm-mm.
It sets the behavior of people, 'di ba?
Mm.
The
Right.
behavior of party list organization is to abide by the party list law, which says 2% and then 3-seat maximum. So instead of building strong, coherent, and cohesive parties built around ideas, platform, and program with real big movements around them, ang ginagawa ng party list to get more seats, they break apart, Jerome, di
Yeah.
ba? So
Mm-hmm.
nakita mo yung Makabayan Block, instead of having one Bayan Muna, for example, they'll break apart into smaller
Mm.
parties so
We
they can
observed
get
that.
more
Yeah.
seats. So yun, that's a low-hanging fruit.
Mm-hmm.
And I praise the president for including it in the list.
Mm-hmm. I see.
Then
Okay.
again, as I articulated before, the president can only do so much. Legislation is the job of Congress, diba? The bigger question now is whether Congress will match this level of political will exhibited by our president.
Yeah.
Lawmakers
It's
ultimately hold the power to
that's
turn
right.
these proposals into meaningful reforms. So
I agree.
I think that's the sum of it, Jerome.
Yes, right. And it's in the hands of our lawmakers
Yeah.
if they will push this anti-dynasty bill, this party list reforms, and also this independent people's commission. It's all in their hands. It's all in their willpower.
Yeah.
Whether to push it or to just reject it or outright reject the bill.
ICI law, Jerome. The ICI law, I think it's easy. I mean, I think there's without a doubt, no.
Mm-mm.
While I feel people can argue, no, that it is more like an added level, no, to what the ombudsman is actually supposed to be doing, no. It's still important that there is one body that's institutionalized, meaning whatever the administration, whoever changes, no, as far as administrations are concerned, there will always be a body tasked to investigate wrongdoings in government. That's supposed to be the job of the ombudsman. But every time that you have this institution that's a multi-agency institution, at least in the design, no, of Senator Kiko Pangilinan, and that has by design the capacity to really undertake serious investigation and to sanction people who do not cooperate, it's always good. But my own view of the ICI, it should be, or this Independent People's Commission, no, is that it should also be something like the PCGG.
Oh, okay.
So apart from investigating, it should also be tasked with looking at investigating ill-gotten wealth and collecting ill-gotten wealth.
Yeah. Okay.
So it should have that function aside from. So it should be a restoration of the PCGG in some sense.
Yes. Should we restore PCGG instead of creating another commission with similar task or similar mission, vision, and goals?
My own sense is, given how much we know about how much has been stolen, at least the estimates,
Yeah. We're
you can
talking
listen
about
to.
billions here.
No, we're talking about close to 1 trillion
Yeah,
pesos
yeah,
here.
yeah.
Yeah, maybe even more over the last, let's say, a decade or so.
Mm-mm.
Uh, ICI is a big step forward, and I'm supportive of it. But I want a restoration of the PCGG so that we can collect all of that
Mm-mm.
loot
Mm-mm.
over a period of time. So
Well,
a PCGG with some sort of investigative powers,
mm-mm.
it's up to Congress really,
Yeah.
but ICI
Mm-mm.
is an important first step, and I think of all those bills that will pass, that's likely to pass.
Mm-hmm.
The bill, there's some technical questions about blockchain and all of that. Why do we
Yes.
need to legislate it? But the idea is also good because we want to
Mm-mm.
formalize, no, strengthen transparency and accountability. So that's probably going to pass also,
Mm-hmm.
especially given the context we have now.
Mm-mm.
The more controversial bills like the party list and how should I say this, the anti-dynasty,
Yes.
I'm less, I'm less optimistic about the anti-dynasty bill.
Mm-hmm. Right.
The Congress would be better served if they had a political party reform act.
Right, right.
Okay, and of course, this, I think the number one for me right now, I think with the biggest chance of moving forward is really the party list reform act,
Okay.
where you just have to change the floor
Mm.
of 2%, raise it to 5%,
Mm-mm.
like other European models, and then take out the 3-seat maximum.
Mm-hmm. For
And
party
that
list
will really
reform.
change 20%
Mm-mm.
of the composition of the nature of that composition of 20% in the House. You'll
Mm-mm.
have more progressive parties coming in, and they will have a bigger say, in shaping the
Mm-mm.
politics at the legislative level.
Right, right. Okay, going back to discussion regarding the Independent People's Commission. Just a quick answer, Prof. Ranjit. So, thus creating another agency like the IPC create another layer of bureaucracy. Yeah, with the IPC to strengthen accountability, or does it risk diluting the powers of existing constitutional bodies like the ombudsman or COA?
And that's one perspective, and it's a perspective I share, because in
Yeah.
the end, it's really just the ombudsman that does that job. I mean, we're better served by strengthening the COA, for example, giving it more teeth.
Mm-mm.
Yeah,
Right,
rather
right.
than building another structure. But then again, any attempt at reform at this point, it will always be something welcome because it's a reaction to what people want.
Mm-mm.
Now, eh, my view, instead of creating a new layer, strengthen COA. Instead of creating a new layer, strengthen the ombudsman by
Mm-mm.
giving it more, not just budget, but also, strengthening its institutions.
Mm-mm.
We're better served with a stronger court system. Because in the end, after you investigate, if you don't prosecute,
Mhm.
then that's the
Mm-mm.
problem. We have what's our conviction rate now? The Napoles cases are only being solved now after a decade.
Yeah.
Okay, the average case around, this is from data way back about 5-6 years ago.
Mhm.
The conviction rate is around 40%, Jerome. So what
Slow.
does it tell you? Diba? And then the average corruption case is between 7 to 10 years.
Mm-mm.
So what does it tell you? Can you tell my students now that crime does not pay? Of course it
No.
pays. Because what?
Mm-mm.
You have 60% chance of winning because the conviction rate is what? Less than 50%, 40%. And you have what? 7 years to enjoy yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So, then here comes the, you have to praise the new ombudsman because now he's not going for plunder. He's going for lower level cases like malversation. So it's easier to put people in jail.
Mm-hmm. Right.
The requirements are less. So you understand? So
Yes,
these
yes.
strategies of the ombudsman are actually working because other people are now talking because they're going to go to jail. Everybody wants to be a star witness, a state witness.
Mm-hmm.
So the strategies are working, but we need to strengthen the ombudsman. We need a bigger office. Obviously, we need a bigger office. But then again,
Mm-mm.
That's investigation and prosecutorial. We need to stop this situation of flood control
Mm-mm.
scams, no, ano ba? Ghost projects.
Yes. Mm-mm.
So these are implementation issues. Eh.
Mm-mm.
I don't know if we need new laws for that. What we
Mm-mm.
could do is expand transparency and accountability. Let's say in an organization like the DPWH,
Mm-mm.
which we have now found is very corrupt. Not everybody there is corrupt, but there's certain people, no? Undersecretary Bernardo's
Mm-mm.
statements are incredible statements of how systemic, endemic, and problematic corruption is in
Mm-mm.
that government agency. And we're just talking about the DPWH. We haven't gone to agencies that are historically known, no,
Mm-mm.
to have problems like this, challenges like this, like the Bureau of Customs or the BIR. So it will take some time for us to really
Mm-mm.
solve this problem. We need to work
Mm-mm.
on it, and
Mm-mm.
it will take a whole of nations, no nation approach.
It will take a lot. I mean, whole of society, whole of nation, whatever you name it. So
Yeah.
it will be a long process, and it will be in everyone and everything will be involved in this systemic change that we need here in the Philippines,
Yeah.
particularly in our government. Anyway, I have 5 more minutes left because we're anticipating actually Prof. Ranjit of the speech of the president. But just one question before I let you go. So we often see corruption and inflation as top concern in surveys, Prof. Ranjit. So everyone's I'm sorry, monthly rather, you release a series of surveys that shows the top concerns of Filipinos. Do you think those reforms being pushed by the president himself, like the anti-dynasty or Cadena Acts, actually resonate with what we call the masa or the Class C, D, and E?
Well, it's not really what they want and need at the moment. But there's a short-term, urgent. In our surveys, the question has been for Okta Research over the
Mm-mm.
last 3 quarters. We're releasing our fourth quarter report in January. Um, the reality is the top 5 concerns of Filipinos are: number one, high cost of goods and services.
Mm-mm.
Number two, and it's a tie, no, which is way. I don't. Okay, number two is really ending corruption,
Yes.
dealing with corruption.
Mm-mm.
Okay, I think tied with that in the third quarter is really the issue of wages. Okay.
Mm.
Yeah, the cost, I'm sorry, cost of food.
Mm.
Fourth is wages. Okay.
Mm.
And fifth is really general poverty. How do we deal with that? Getting jobs, no?
Mm.
So these are the top 5 major concerns. And they've been the top 5 major concerns, except for corruption, which was not part of the top 5 for the last year and a half.
Mm.
Okay. These have been the top concerns, economic concerns of Filipinos.
Mm. And yeah,
And,
oh,
and so
go
is
ahead.
the president responding to that? Yes, I think they are. There is a concerted effort to respond. But see, the attempt of the president to look at it from a holistic perspective, that corruption has an impact on all of these problems: access to food,
Mm.
the issue of how do we manage government resources, which are not so much,
Mm.
but is needed by a huge amount of our population for subsidies, ayuda, and all of that.
Mm.
So while it's not part of the urgent, while it is part of the urgent concerns, I feel that the president is through his economic team, his initiatives over the last 2 quarters, have
Mm.
been pushing the interest of our people, no, as far
Yeah.
as the economy is concerned.
Mm.
Inflation now has gone down.
Mm.
Employment has been up, at least for the most part of the year,
Mm.
except possibly in the third quarter. We expect a boost in employment in the fourth quarter. So the economy is not has grown by 4%. It
Mm.
has not reached its target, but it has grown.
Yeah.
Okay,
Mm.
but the structural problems of our economy didn't just happen during the Marcos period. You have to understand the Marcos administration started with -10 to give you just being hyperbolic.
Mm.
It inherited a broken economic system. And now it's only just beginning to improve, no?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we have all these problems coming up. So that process of change is going to
Mm.
happen. It's happening, but it's happening slowly.
Yeah, yeah. All right, all right. So we don't have much time here, Prof. Ranjit, as we're anticipating the speech of the president. But anyway, that's a very interesting discussion regarding the priority bills that President Marcos is asking for Congress to enact it. So we will wait and see for these developments if these priority bills will be pushed through. And as mentioned, it's in the hands of our lawmakers if they will
Yes.
do it or not. All
Yes.
right.
If this is all for show, it will really be in the hands of our
Mm-mm.
own congressmen and senators.
Mm-mm.
If they mean what they say and say what they mean about reform, then they should push these initiatives forward.
All right, all right,
Thank you.
and with that, thank you so much for joining us in the program, the assistant professor of the Department of Political Science at University of the Philippines, Diliman, and also the fellow of Octa Research, Professor Ranjit Rai.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and that was the interview of the program with Professor Ranjit Rai, and now we now switch to a presidential event where President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. has conducted an on-site inspection at the San Juanico Bridge in the town of Cabalawan in Tacloban City. I think we now have the speech of President Marcos Jr. Okay. All right. While we try to hook up with the RTVM regarding the speech of the president, we'll have a little short break here in the program Front and Center on Radyo Pilipinas World Service. We'll be right back.
Paano nga ba mag-register para magkaroon ng schedule sa Bagong Pilipinas Presidential Action Center? Narito ang mga dapat gawin. Gamit ang iyong mobile device, pumunta sa eGovPH app. Pwede itong i-download mula sa Apple App Store o sa Google Play Store. Gumawa ng account. Ilagay ang email address, valid mobile number, pagkatapos ay makakatanggap ka ng one-time code sa iyong email. Gamitin ang code sa eGov app para sa verification ng iyong account at ng mga impormasyong ibinigay. Congratulations! Meron ka ng eGovPH app account. Pwede mo na ma-access ang iba't ibang serbisyo ng gobyerno kabilang ang mga serbisyo sa Bagong Pilipinas Presidential Action Center.
Back here on Front and Center on Radyo Pilipinas World Service. With me, Jerome Toledo, and we don't have a speech of the president right now, but we'll try to stream that speech of the president as he conducted an on-site inspection at the San Juanico Bridge in the town of Cabalawan in Tacloban City, because that bridge was in the spotlight due to a structural damage that was seen there in the past few months. So as the president inspected that bridge over Tacloban City, he will see of how much progress was made there, and if the major structural damage over that bridge is or has been fixed. Okay, so are we going to play now the speech? Okay, so let's listen to the speech of President Marcos Jr. at inspection of San Juanico Bridge in Tacloban City.
na one way lang ang takbo. So isasara yung one side. Kagaya pagka tinatrabaho yung kalsada, ganun. That's the same idea. So we will explore that possibility para naman mas maging magaang mas maging magaang ang ginagawa ng mga transportation workers na tumatawid at mas mapapabilis at hindi lang yon siyempre makakapagbalik sila sa dati nilang binabayaran na ngayon nagbabayad pa sila para sumakay sa barko ay baka mabawasan yung kanilang kailangan bayaran, which will also bring down transport costs, which will also bring down the price of goods. So it's ganun kahalaga itong trabahong ginawa dito. Kung makita ninyo yung mga section na talagang malaki ang sira ay linagyan na muna ng reinforcement. Ito yung malalaki na bakal, yan ang reinforcement para habang inaayos yung sa ilalim, yung mga nakikita natin dyan, yung mga nakalawang, yung mga bolt na nawala na, yung mga pin na nawala na, yan ang ginagawa nila ngayon. Ang ating, we are hoping for the total return of the bridge's function to allow 33 tons two ways by the middle of when do we think we can?
Third quarter of 26.
Hopefully by the middle of next year, third quarter of next year, fully functional na ito. I hope that this serves as a lesson to all future administrators of in government, of all government workers who have anything to do with this. The retrofit cost us 1.1 billion pesos. That is money that we could have saved if proper maintenance was carried out on San Juanico. We would not have to do any of this kung yung every 3 years ini-inspeksyon, inaayos, wala tayong gagastusin na kahit na ano, yun lang. MOE lang yun. That's the MOE of DPWH. Nakasama dyan. Kasama yan sa MOE ng DPWH. Kung saan napunta, kaya hindi na nag-inspeksyon, kaya tayo nagkaganto. Sana naman, itong experience natin na ito, matuto na tayo na napaka-importante na tayo ay continuing maintenance. Ngayon, tinanong ko sa ating mga engineer, kung tama ang ating pag-maintain, kung tama ang ating pag-ayos, magkakaroon ba tayo ng malaking retrofit in so many years? Ika nila, basta't maayos ang maintenance, hindi na tayo kailangan mag-retrofit. Siguro mag-repaving o ganyan, pero madaling trabaho lang yan. Pero hindi na natin kailangan gawin ito ulit. Basta't maayos ang tuloy-tuloy, constant and regular maintenance ang gagawin. That is what's the most important lesson I think that we should all learn from this. Ang laking sagabal sa commerce dito sa Region 8 ang nangyari dito dahil sa pagsisira nakita natin maraming sira dito sa San Juanico. At it's not just convenience, but it is cost, it is food supply, it is the raw material for some of our manufacturers. It is of course the goods that are being sold in the stores. Lahat yan naapektuhan. Kaya again, I hope that this is a lesson to us and of all of those in the future whose responsibility will be to look after our thoroughfares, that to always remember the experience of San Juanico Bridge, that if we had only maintained it, we would have saved a great deal of problems. Not only that 1.1 billion pesos that we spent, kung hindi yung sakripisyo na dinaanan ng ating mga truck, ating mga tindahan sa Samar, dito sa Tacloban, sa Leyte, on either side. So the effect of that is much much bigger than just the bridge. Kaya yun ang ating laging kailangan isipin at matuto na tayo. Alam naman natin kung paano gagawin para maiwasan yung ganyang klaseng sitwasyon. But I'm very happy that I'm able to say now it is very close to our deadline And so the San Juanico Bridge is partially finished. It will be finished next year. The repair of San Juanico Bridge is partially finished. It will be finished next year so that the bridge will be able to take again the load of 33 tons going both ways. All right? Maraming salamat. Damo salamat. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President.
And that was the speech of President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. as he led the on-site inspection of the San Juanico Bridge in the town of Cabalawan in Tacloban City. As President Marcos Jr. said, that bridge is partially open, though there will be regular checkups regarding the structural integrity of that bridge. That's President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. conducted an on-site inspection there at San Juanico Bridge in Tacloban City in the province of Leyte. And with that, we now conclude this edition of Front and Center here on Radyo Pilipinas World Service, together with our technical team headed by Mr. Milo Janela. And on our Warcast, we have Hiro Lucero, and audio streaming, we have Leo Magpayo. This is your host, Jerome Toledo. Until next time, mabuhay.
You have just heard and watched Front and Center. Front and Center. Join us again for another edition here on Radyo Pilipinas World Service. Front and Center.